The rain fell steadily on the streets of Madrid, creating small rivers that flowed toward the storm drains as the city's evening rush hour began to wind down. Under the concrete overpass near Atocha station, Miguel Santos huddled beneath a torn blue tarp, trying to keep his few possessions dry while the cold October wind cut through his worn military jacket. At 62 years old, Miguel had been living on the streets for almost 3 years, ever since a series of unfortunate events had stripped away everything he had worked for during his civilian life after leaving the Spanish army. His weathered hands shook slightly as he adjusted the tarp, not from the cold alone, but from the tremors that had started after his service in Afghanistan, a reminder of the improvised explosive device that had changed his life forever. Miguel's story was one that many people passed by every day without truly seeing. A decorated veteran who had served his country with honor for 25 years, only to find himself forgotten and invisible when he needed help the most. He had been a communications specialist in the Army, responsible for coordinating radio transmissions between units in dangerous territories, and his keen ear for voices and accents had saved countless lives by helping identify friendly forces in chaotic situations. Now that same ability to recognize voices served mainly to remind him of better times when his skills were valued and his service meant something to the people around him. As the evening grew darker and the rain continued, Miguel heard footsteps approaching on the sidewalk above his makeshift shelter. Two men were walking slowly, speaking in hushed tones as they passed under the streetlights. One voice carried a distinct Portuguese accent, speaking Spanish with the particular inflection that Miguel had learned to identify during his years of military service when he had worked with international forces. The voice was discussing something about training schedules and upcoming matches, and there was something familiar about its tone and cadence that made Miguel's head turn toward the sound. "I think we should focus more on defensive positioning for the next game," the Portuguese accented voice was saying. "The team has been vulnerable on the left side, and we need to address that before it becomes a bigger problem." Miguel's eyes widened as recognition hit him like a lightning bolt. That voice, he had heard it countless times on television, in interviews, and in match commentaries. It was unmistakably Cristiano Ronaldo, the Real Madrid superstar, walking just a few feet above where he was sheltering from the rain. Miguel had been a football fan his entire life, following the sport religiously, even during his military deployments, and Ronaldo's voice was as recognizable to him as his own family members. The two men continued walking, their footsteps echoing in the tunnel-like space under the overpass. Miguel knew this was probably his only chance to speak to his footballing hero, but years of homelessness had taught him to be invisible, to avoid drawing attention to himself from people who might view him as a threat or a nuisance. However, something deep inside him, perhaps a remnant of the confidence he had once possessed as a respected soldier, compelled him to act. "Excuse me," Miguel called out, his voice rough from months of limited conversation with other people. "Cristiano, is that really you?" The footsteps stopped abruptly, and Miguel could hear the two men conferring in low voices. After a moment, he heard the Portuguese accent responding, "Yes, it's me. Who's asking?" Miguel slowly emerged from under his tarp, knowing that his appearance would likely shock the famous footballer. His hair was unkempt, his beard was long and gray, and his clothes were obviously worn and stained from life on the streets. But he stood as straight as his damaged back would allow, and looked directly at Ronaldo with the dignity that had never truly left him despite his circumstances. "My name is Miguel Santos," he said clearly. "I served in the Spanish army for 25 years, and I've been following your career since you first came to Real Madrid. I recognized your voice immediately. I have a good ear for these things from my military training." Ronaldo studied Miguel's face in the dim light from the street lamps above. Rather than showing disgust or fear, his expression showed genuine curiosity and respect. "You were in the army for 25 years? That's incredible service. What was your rank when you retired?" Miguel straightened his shoulders with visible pride. "Sergeant Major, sir. I was a communications specialist, served in Afghanistan and several other deployments. I loved serving my country, and I was good at my job." There was a pause as Ronaldo processed this information, clearly seeing beyond Miguel's current appearance to the man he had been and still was underneath. Sergeant Major Santos, it's an honor to meet you. Thank you for your service to Spain. Can I ask what brings you to be living here under this overpass? The simple respect in Ronaldo's voice, the use of his military rank, and the genuine question about his circumstances nearly brought tears to Miguel's eyes. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to him with dignity, much less acknowledged his military service. After I left the army, I had trouble adjusting to civilian life, Miguel explained. The injuries I sustained during my service made it difficult to find steady work, and I developed some problems with alcohol that I'm not proud of. I lost my apartment, then my job, and eventually ended up here. I've been trying to get back on my feet, but it's harder than you might think when you don't have an address or clean clothes for job interviews. Ronaldo listened intently, and Miguel could see that the footballer was genuinely moved by his story. Miguel, how long have you been living on the streets? Almost 3 years now, Miguel replied honestly. Some days are better than others, but I keep hoping that things will improve. I still have my pride, and I haven't given up completely. What happened next would change Miguel's life forever. Ronaldo reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, but instead of taking a selfie or calling security, he dialed a number and began speaking rapidly in Portuguese to whoever answered. After a few minutes of intense conversation, he hung up and turned back to Miguel with a serious expression. Miguel, I'm going to make you an offer, but I need to know that you're serious about changing your situation. Are you willing to accept help if it means committing to getting your life back on track? Miguel nodded emphatically. Absolutely, sir. I've been wanting to change my circumstances for a long time, but I haven't known how to begin. Ronaldo smiled for the first time since their conversation began. In that case, I'm going to arrange for you to have a place to stay tonight, and tomorrow we're going to start working on getting you back to where you belong. A man who served his country for 25 years deserves better than sleeping under an overpass. Within an hour, a black car arrived to pick up Miguel and his belongings. Ronaldo personally accompanied him to a small but comfortable hotel near the city center, where he arranged for Miguel to have a room for an entire month, while more permanent solutions were put in place. But the help didn't stop there. Over the following weeks, Ronaldo used his connections and resources to address every aspect of Miguel's situation. First, he arranged for Miguel to receive comprehensive medical care, including treatment for the injuries that had been bothering him since his military service, and counseling to help him deal with the psychological challenges of readjusting to civilian life. The medical team discovered that several of Miguel's health issues could be treated effectively, and within a month, he was feeling better physically than he had in years. Next, Ronaldo connected Miguel with a veterans advocacy organization that specialized in helping former military personnel transition back into civilian employment. Through this organization, Miguel was able to access job training programs and eventually found work as a security supervisor at a company that specifically hired veterans. His military experience and natural leadership abilities made him an excellent fit for the position, and his employers were impressed by his dedication and reliability. Perhaps most importantly, Ronaldo made sure that Miguel had stable housing. He quietly arranged for Miguel to move into a veterans housing complex that provided not only affordable apartments, but also ongoing support services for former military personnel dealing with various challenges. The community aspect of the housing complex helped Miguel rebuild his social connections and gave him a sense of belonging that he had lost during his years on the streets. 6 months after their chance encounter under the overpass, Miguel had completely transformed his life. He was working full-time in a job he enjoyed, living in his own apartment, and had reconnected with some of his former military colleagues who had helped him rebuild his social network. More importantly, he had regained his sense of purpose and self-worth, feeling once again like the respected sergeant major he had been during his military career. Throughout this entire process, Ronaldo maintained regular contact with Miguel, checking on his progress and offering encouragement during difficult moments. Their relationship had evolved from a chance meeting between a celebrity and a homeless veteran to a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. Miguel often reflected on how a simple recognition of Ronaldo's voice had led to such a dramatic change in his circumstances, but he also understood that it was Ronaldo's character and genuine compassion that had made the difference. The story of their meeting and Miguel's transformation eventually became known within Madrid's veterans community, inspiring other former military personnel to seek help and giving hope to those who had lost faith in their ability to rebuild their lives. Miguel became an advocate for homeless veterans, using his own experience to help others navigate the complex process of getting back on their feet. He often spoke at veterans events, sharing his story and emphasizing that asking for help was not a sign of weakness, but a step toward reclaiming the life and dignity that every veteran deserved. 1 year after their initial meeting, Miguel attended a Real Madrid match as Ronaldo's personal guest. Sitting in the VIP section, wearing a clean suit and surrounded by other distinguished guests, he reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him from living under an overpass to having a successful career and stable home. When Ronaldo scored a goal during the match, he looked up toward Miguel's section and gave a subtle thumbs up, a gesture that brought tears of gratitude to the veteran's eyes. After the match, when reporters asked Ronaldo about his charitable work, he gave his standard response about using his platform to help others, but he never specifically mentioned Miguel or took credit for the veteran's remarkable transformation. For Ronaldo, the satisfaction came not from public recognition, but from knowing that a man who had served his country with honor was now living with the dignity and respect he deserved. Miguel, for his part, never forgot the moment when a chance recognition of a familiar voice had led to a life-changing encounter with genuine human kindness and compassion.